One conference that's underway in Paris, France. Let's cross to our reporter Dan Whitehead, who's covering proceedings there for us. Good afternoon, Dan, and welcome to the SABC News Desk.
Good afternoon.
Well, we do understand that President Jacob Zuma has just wrapped up his 3-minute address to the conference. We know that South Africa is an active member of the AU, also a very vocal member of the G77, and is one of the 4 developing countries poised to become an engine of Southern African global economic growth. What did the President say?
Yeah, absolutely. And the President, Jacob Zuma, coming across as someone who is really steering developing countries and the African continent as a whole in terms of his ability to push the message that Africa and the developing nations do need help from the developed countries when it comes to tackling climate change. Now, looking back through his 3-minute speech, and they were all given 3 minutes, some went over, just down to the sheer number of leaders which are gathering here in Paris. He started by paying tribute, of course, to those who lost their lives in the terrorist attacks just over 2 weeks ago, as did many of the leaders, saying that Paris was a symbol of global humanity following the attacks. He then went on to outlining how important COP21 and the issue of climate change was to South Africa, saying it was of immense importance as the delegates here at the conference build on the COP17 agreement which were reached in Durban a few years ago. He said that South Africa had solidarity with developing countries, and that more needs to be done from developed countries to reflect this in the agreements made here in Paris. He is essentially calling for more money than the $100 billion which was agreed at the COP meeting in Copenhagen in 2009. He believes that that's not enough. More needs to be raised, and more needs to be done to ensure that developing nations can do more to tackle climate change. And he wants those agreements to be legal, a legally binding obligation. He said that developed nations have a legally binding obligation under the United Nations to help their developing partners to tackle climate change. So that was very much the message from Jacob Zuma, but we, of course, also heard from other leaders as well.
Yes, Dan, these other leaders very quickly included Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. counterpart Barack Obama. Interestingly, they're 2 of the globe's largest carbon emitters right now. What was their message, and what sort of political momentum are we seeing kick off these critical negotiations?
Barack Obama gave a very impassioned speech saying that the growing threat of climate change, in his words, could define the contours of this century more than any other. He described this as a turning point, saying that the understanding of the ways that human beings disrupt the climate advances day by day. That knowledge is increasing. He referred to the fact that 14 of the 15 warmest years on record have occurred since the year 2000. 2015 on course to be the warmest of them all. He said that no nation is immune to what this means, and the messages that we're hearing from his counterpart Xi Jinping and Barack Obama himself, and even climate change skeptic Vladimir Putin, the Russian president who is here, who said that climate change has become one of the gravest challenges that humanity is facing. All of these senior world leaders are putting forward the message, certainly in words, that action has to be taken, and this is a make or break summit. Whether or not that will equate to real agreements and actions at the end of this 2-week summit, of course, we'll have to wait and see.
Dan, let's move outside the conference building for just a moment and talk about this brandalism campaign we're seeing on the streets of Paris right now, really taking the mickey out of taking a dig at corporate sponsors of a summit of this nature. How are these being received on the streets of Paris, especially seeing that the city is now flooded with foreign delegates?
Yeah, absolutely. You certainly don't feel it too much here at the summit. We are, 15 minutes or so outside of Paris. Of course, a very secure summit. Security is high, around 3,000 police officers just at this venue alone. So there is, I would say, we're perhaps in a COP21 bubble when it comes to what's going on in the streets outside here in Paris. But of course, people are aware of the protest which took place last night, around 200 protesters arrested last night. And then, of course, this brandalism, as you say, and there's been much criticism on social media as well about, the private jets flying in, and it's very much there is a message against that in terms of the leaders. They're here for one day for the photo call. many people are sceptic that will actually equate into re-election by the end of the fortnight.
Dan Whitehead, thank you for your time on the News Today desk. He's coming to us, of course, from the COP21 climate talks underway in Paris, France, where President Jacob Zuma has just wrapped up his brief address to conference delegates.